Today's lesson is all about how to multiply numbers with decimals in them. So we're going to do two examples from start to finish to help you learn how to set up your problem and also solve it to get the final answer. So we're going to start with an example. Let's think of a situation in real life that could match this example. So I'm going to say I'm purchasing something at the store. Maybe it's a book and it costs $8.25. But instead of purchasing one of them, I'm going to purchase 7. So when you're doing something over and over and over again, it often means that you can multiply by that number and get to your final answer quicker than if you were adding this price up and using it 7 different times. So let's do $8.25 times 7. So the first thing to know is when you're multiplying, you should always write the longer number on top. This is just going to help you later on so that you don't accidentally mix up what numbers are multiplied with which ones. So because the $8.25 has 3 digits, we're going to put that number on top. 8.25. And you can put your little dollar sign if that's helpful. The next thing to note is that when you're multiplying numbers, especially numbers with decimals, you do not have to line them up by the decimal point. And the reason is you're going to multiply each number times all the other numbers. So it doesn't matter where you line them up, everything's going to get multiplied by the other digit eventually. So I'm going to multiply by 7, and because I don't have to line it up, I'm just going to slide it all the way to the right. 7. So this is different than when you were adding and subtracting decimals. When we're multiplying, we're going to end up moving the decimal, so we do not have to line it up from the beginning. So my next tip for all of you is to ignore the decimal for now. We're going to deal with the decimal a little bit later. So I'm going to act like this decimal is not here, and I'm going to multiply the same way I multiply whole numbers. So I'm going to do 7 times 5, which is 35. Regroup the 3. I'm going to do 7 times 2, which is 14, plus 3 is 17, regroup 1, and 7 times 8 is 56, plus 1 more is 57. Okay. Now, since we've done all the multiplying that we need to do, it's time to think about the decimal. And the thing to remember with multiplication is that the decimal might move. And what that means is we need to count up the decimal places in both of the numbers and make sure that our answer has the total number of decimals in our numbers. So I like to draw these decimal seats. They're kind of these little spots. So I noticed that in $8.25, there were 2 decimal places. So I showed those 2 seats. In the number 7, there were none. There wasn't even a decimal point because nothing came after it. So because up here the total number of decimal places is 2, I want 2 in my answer. So I'm going to start from the right, count over 2 spots, and I'm going to put my decimal point in there. I'm going to make that a little darker, and I'm going to put my dollar sign. So the amount of money I spent on all 7 books is $57.75. The next thing we're going to practice is multiplying when there's 2 different decimals of different lengths. So we have 12.35 times 4.6. So let's think of a real life situation. Maybe this is the size of a rectangular project and I want to cover the entire area of my rectangle with fabric. So if one side of my rectangle is 12.35 inches and the other side is 4.6, I know that area is length times width, so when I multiply them, that will tell me how much fabric it will take to cover the entire project. So again, we're always going to put the longer number on top, and in this case, 12.35 is going to go on top. Even if that number came on the right side, you're still going to put the longer number on top because we can multiply in any direction. 9 times 8 is the same answer as 8 times 9. So then we're going to put 4.6, and remember, we're going to move that decimal later anyways, so you do not have to line them up by the decimal. I'm going to slide it over to be directly under the 3 and the 5. Let's multiply these numbers. So we have everything ready to go. We're going to ignore these decimals until a little bit later. So 6 times 5 is 30, regroup the 3. 6 times 3 is 18, 19, 20, 21. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 2 is 14, and 6 times 1 plus 1 is 7. Now, a lot of sixth graders forget that they still have an entire row of multiplication to do. So I'm going to switch colors to make it easier to see. So I am finished with my 6. So I like to cross it off. I also personally like to cross off all of the regrouping so that I don't accidentally count them later. Now, I'm going to do the 4 times each of the digits in my top number. But before I do that, I need to have a placeholder 0. So a lot of students say that's a magic 0, and they're kind of right, except it's not magic. It just means that I'm no longer multiplying by something in that place. So I'm finished with that place, so this is holding the spot. It's a placeholder. Now we'll do 4 times 5 is 20. Regroup the 2. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 is 14. Regroup the 1. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, and 4 times 1 is 4. Now that I'm done with the 4, I'm finished with my multiplying because I no longer have any other digits in my second factor. So I'm going to add my partial products together. This was half of the work. Here's the other half. Let's put them together for our final answer. 0 plus 0, 1 plus 0, 4 and 4 makes 8, 9 and 7 is 16. I'm going to regroup, and 4 and 1 makes 5. Now, just like in the previous example, we need to count up our decimal places to know how many total places are going to be in our answer. So I'm going to count up the decimal places in my first number. There were 2 decimal places. You can even jot a 2 off to the side if it's helpful. The next number had 1 decimal place. So my final answer needs a total of 3. So I'm going to start on the right and count over 1, 2, 3 places. So my final answer is 56.810 square inches of fabric. The other way to write this is it can be written as 56.81. Both of those are accurate ways to represent this number. I call this a dangling 0 because it's a 0 dangling after the decimal point and it's at the very end. So you don't have to write that 0. It's just a placeholder 0. So you can feel free to chop off the dangling zeros if they're at the end. Okay. The last thing I want to go over really quickly, and I'm going to jot it in the middle, and that is if you're solving something with money. So I'm going to go back to our first example for a minute. Let's pretend that we solved a question about money, we multiplied, and we got a final answer that looked something like this. Circle this answer. So let's say we got a money example and it came out to be longer than the hundredths place. So we know that when we're counting coins, we only have 2 numbers after the decimal place because 100 pennies is the most amount of coins we can get before we have the next dollar. So I like to underline the tenths and the hundredths, and then I'm going to look at the neighbor and see if I need to round up or if I can stay down. So we always have to round this to what we call the nearest penny. We can't cut a penny into smaller pieces. That's actually against the law. So if you ever get a money answer that's longer than the hundredths place, you want to round to the nearest penny. Because this is a 4, I'm going to keep this down to $3.79. Okay, and that's going to be my final answer when I have to round something to the nearest penny. It's just something that happens when they ask us to round or if it's money. So keep that in mind. If this was bigger, we would have rounded up to $3.80, which would be the next penny up. Good luck on today's work, and feel free to rewind this and pause, take some notes, do whatever you need to do to practice today's lesson, and reach out to me if you have any questions.